Welcome, students. Today we'll start the next chapter of your history, that is Nazism and the rise of Hitler. Nazism and the rise of Hitler. Students, in this chapter we are going to discuss story of Helmut, genocidal war, birth of Weimar Republic, and peace treaty of Versailles. Here the world scenario, that was the political system prevailing between the time period of First World War to the end of the Second World War. And whatever the historical developments took place during this period of time has changed the world politics, world geographical scenario, as well as political system of existing period of that. Particularly, this chapter starts from the beginning of the First World War, that is the period of 1914, and up to the period of end of the Second World War, that is 1945. And particularly as the word Hitler is there, you must be wondering who is that Hitler. And the story of Hitler, that is the rise of Hitler, and his propounded ideology Nazism, about that we are going to discuss in this chapter. But the past part of the chapters here starts with the story of Helmut. It is a very interesting story. At the same time, this chapter, Nazism and the rise of Hitler, I hope all of you will enjoy. It is one of the most important chapter in the history of the world, which has changed the geographical and political scenario of the world. And many things changed after that also. What changes were made and how the changes were made and what are the reason for that, we are going to discuss in this chapter. What are the circumstances? What was the political scenario of that period of time which led to the rise of Hitler? All these things we are going to discuss in this chapter. But first the story starts with, or the chapter starts with, the story of Helmut. What is that story? Who is Helmut? Let us see. In the spring of 1945, a 11-year-old boy called Helmut was lying in bed when he overheard his parents discussing something in serious tone. A 11-year-old boy, Helmut, just lying in his bed. His parents were thinking that he had already slept, but at that time he was not slept. He was just lying in a bed and he heard something very serious about what the parents were talking about. And it was a very serious matter. And his father was a prominent physician of that time. And he was talking to his wife, telling to his wife that whether the time had come to kill the family or if he could commit suicide alone. You know, it is a very serious matter. His father was telling to his mother, Helmut's mother, that whether time has come to kill the family or he could commit suicide alone. You see, any child, whoever will listen from his parents that they are going to kill themselves or talking about the suicide, is not it a serious matter? But he listened all these things, what his parents were talking about. His father spoke about his fear of revenge. He was talking about something, revenge. What he was saying? That now the allies will do to us what we did to the crippled and Jews. His father was telling to his mother that now they will take the revenge. The same way what they did with the crippled and Jews. Who will take the revenge? The allies. Now, you must see, you should know what the allies is. During that period of time, it was the beginning of the 1940. The story starts with the beginning of the 1940. Try to understand, students. It is a very fascinating story. And the political scenario of that time starts with the 1940. What the father was talking about. The Allied power, initially led by the UK, France, that was the period of 1914, when it was joined by USSR and USA. It means in Allied group, there were 4 major powerful countries. UK, France, USSR. Earlier it was there. Today it is part of that is Russia, USA. And another group was Axis group. The Axis power were led by Germany, Italy and Japan. These were the 2 groups, more powerful group of that period. Allies group and Axis group. So now you got Helmut's father was talking that Allied group could take revenge on them. The way they did with the crippled and Jews. So what happened next day? The next day, Helmut's father took Helmut to the woods where they spent some quality time. They spent some time together singing the old children's song. Knowingly, his father took Helmut to the woods, to the forest. They spent some quality time together by singing some old children's song or memorable song together. Very soon, later on, Helmut's father sought himself in his office. He sought himself in his office. But this was a very painful moment for Helmut's family. Because what he has heard when his parents were talking about the same thing happened after a very short period of time. And that is what? After spending a quality time together in the forest. How could you imagine? Before some time, a parents or a family has spent some quality time with each other, and the very short period of time, the father sought himself. This was a very pathetic period for the Helmut's family. Helmut's, how could he remember? How could he forget the father's dead body? That is with a uniform. And it was burned in the family fireplace. So that speaks about the death of the Helmut's father. The situation was so worse, and this 11-year-old boy Helmut, traumatized by this situation, what he had heard from his parents, and the same thing took place within a very short period of time. As a result of this, being so traumatized, Helmut reacted by refusing to eat at home for the following 9 years. You see, Helmets refused to eat at home for the next 9 years. Do you know what is the reason? The reason was that he was fearing that his mother might poison him. The fear was in the mind of Helmut that his mother might poison him, because already he has heard that his parents were talking about committing suicide or killing the family. So, after the death of Helmut's father, his mother might poison him. This was the fear in the mind of Helmut. So, he refused to eat at home for the next 5 years. 9 years. 9 years. The Helmut may not have realized that his father had been a Nazi and supporter of Adolf Hitler. His father was a supporter and being a Nazi, supporter of Hitler. Nazi is the ideology, a system, political system, an ideology propounded by the great Adolf Hitler. But he had not have any idea about this theory, Nazism, and whether his father was a great supporter of Adolf Hitler or not. In this chapter, we are going to discuss about this Nazism and the rise of Hitler, as I have told you. So, you must have known that Hitler was having a dream in his mind. He was so determined to make Germany into a mighty power, and his ambition was to conquer the whole part of Europe. This was the determination of Adolf Hitler. You might have also known that he killed Jews and he established Nazism. So, Nazism was a system, a structure of ideas about the world and politics. Now, with this story, let us understand what Nazism was and why Helmut's father killed himself. Let us again go to the background part, the flashback part. Why his father was having fear, why his father killed himself. Again, we will go to the background of the story. What is the background? The background was, now starts with 1945. In May 1945, Germany surrendered to the Allies. Students, I have told you, the story starts with the First World War, the beginning period 1914, and will end with the end of the World War II, that is 1945. So, in the year 1945, with the defeat, Germany surrendered to the Allies. Anticipating what was coming, that is, what will happen after the war, what steps the Allies will take. This was the fear in the mind of particularly the supporter of Nazism. And anticipating to that, Hitler and his propaganda minister Goebbels and his entire family committed suicide collectively in his Berlin bunker in April. Now you can see what is Berlin bunker. The bunker generally used by the leaders during the time of emergency to keep themselves safe. One bunker was there in Berlin, which is famous as Berlin bunker, because Hitler had committed suicide there along with his propaganda minister Goebbels and his entire family. Because they were having fear. What fear they were having? The Allies might kill them in the same way, the way they have killed the Jews. This was the fear in the mind of Hitler as well as his propaganda minister. So they collectively committed suicide in the Berlin bunker in April 1945. You see the image of Hitler and the propaganda ministers and family members. They committed suicide in the Berlin bunker. So I have told you, in 1945, World War II came into end. At the end of the war, an international military tribunal was set up at Nuremberg. International military tribunal, which was set up to prosecute Nazi war criminals for their crime against humanity, for their crime against peace, for their crime against war crimes. And this is why the international military tribunal was set up, to prosecute the Nazi war criminals. Germany's conduct during the war, especially those actions which came to be called as crime against humanity. What was the action? What actions were taken by the supporter of Nazism, even the great Hitler? That is why these were called as crime against humanity. And all these crime against humanity, we'll discuss. All this crime against humanity raised serious moral and ethical questions and invited worldwide condemnation. The whole world condemned the activities, the way the Nazi treated the people, particularly the Jews. That is what coming under the crime against humanity. And it raises serious questions among the leaders of the whole world. Now the question is, what are these acts? Why these acts were called as crime against humanity? Under the shadow of the Second World War, Germany had waged a genocidal war. It was called as a genocidal war, which resulted in the mass murder of selected groups of innocent civilians of Europe. Not all the communities were treated. Only a selected groups of innocent civilians were murdered. Mass murder. That is why it is called genocidal war. Killing large number of people at a time is called genocidal war. This was the act. What that act? Already we have got genocidal war. And killing selected groups of innocent civilians. Now you see the facts. The number of people killed from different groups were 6 million Jews, 2 lakhs gypsies, 1 million Polish civilian people belong to Poland, 70,000 Germans, even people from his own country also killed, who were considered mentally and physically disabled. People, those who were considered as mentally and physically disabled, having no contribution to the development of the country, they were killed during the time of Nazi rule. And at the same time, innumerable political opponents were also killed. Those who were opposing the ideology of Nazism, ideology of Hitler. So, this was the genocidal war. Killing large number of people, 6 million Jews, 2 lakhs gypsies, 70,000 Germans. For this reason, this act of killing people is known as genocidal war, and it is a crime against humanity, crime against peace. Now, how they were killed? Nazis devised an unprecedented means of killing people. Something different, not as it was followed by the earlier rulers, by hanging them. No, this was not the way. As we have seen in case of time of reign of terror in France, Maximilian Robespierre adopted different way to kill people like guillotine. Here, the fact was not like that. The people were killed in a different way by keeping them in the gas chamber. As there are many such chambers where they are in different parts of Germany, like a center at Auschwitz. So that is why it is a crime against humanity. The Nuremberg Tribunal, International Military Tribunal, sentenced only 11 leaders, leading to death. Many others were imprisoned for life. Now the question is that, simple questions in our mind, why only 11 people were sentenced to death? Were there only 11 people during that period of time who were associated with them with the same incident by killing large number of people? Only 11 people were there? No. Many people were there. But only 11 people were given imprisonment. Do you know why? The retribution did come, yet the punishment of the Nazi was far short of the brutality extent of their crimes. Though the Nazis committed such grave mistakes by committing large number of people, killing large number of people, still 11 people were given punishment. Because the Allies did not want to be harsh on the defeated Germany as they had been after the First World War. After the end of the First World War, when the Axis group were defeated, whatever the harsh treatment were imposed on the Axis group by the Allies, they didn't want to repeat the same thing here after the end of the World War II. Try to understand. Whatever the treatment was given to the Axis group after the end of the World War I, this didn't want to be repeated by the Allied. That is why only 11 people were sentenced to imprisonment. Because all the leaders, the world leaders, particularly the Allied powers, they felt that the rise of Nazi Germany could be traced back to the German experience at the end of the First World War. It means whatever the situation has arisen today, that is the beginning of the World War II and the end of the World War II, that is because of the punishment or the harsh treatment imposed over the Germany after the end of World War I. The rise of Nazi Germany is the effect of the imposition made by the Allied after the World War I. So, such situation might not arise. This was the fear in the mind of the world leaders. That is why the Allies didn't want to be harsh on the defeated Germany as they had after the World War I. This is how the punishment was not so severe. They didn't want to repeat the mistake. Because in the real sense, if you will see the whole scenario of the World War I, starting of the World War I and end of the World War II, it is because of the harsh scenario. Political imposition over Germany led to the rise of Nazism or the rise of Hitler. Students, I have told you earlier also, Hitler was a great leader. But one of the important fact is that Hitler was not born, Hitler was made. Statement, Hitler was not born, Hitler was made. Great saying. And this was the context of the punishment given the imposition made by the Allied over the Axis group after the end of World War I. That led to the rise of Hitler. That is why I have told you, Hitler was not born, Hitler was made. And how? We will discuss in this chapter. And what happened after the end of the World War I? That will be the part of discussion now. The starting of the chapters will be from the birth of Weimar Republic. Let us start. Already we have discussed about the story, how or what are the facts which led to the rise of Nazism and rise of Hitler. And here we will start with the birth of Weimar Republic. Germany, a powerful empire in the early years of 20th century, first fought the First World War along with the Austrian Empire and against the Allies. Try to remember, the First World War was between the imperialism and the world leaders. That is, Central Powers and the Allied. In the Second World War, Allied and Axis. In the First War, it was between Central Powers and Allies power. The Central Powers were dominated by the great empires, Austrian Empire, German Empire, with the Allies. Here, two powerful groups were there during the period of 1914. Allies group, England, France, Russia, and later on it was joined by America in 1970. With the joining of America, Allies power became more strong. And Central Power, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Ottoman Empire. World War I. Between these two groups, Allies and Central Power. You see, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, Ottoman Empire, these countries are the central, coming under the Central Power, whereas France, Great Britain, Russia, they are coming under the Allied forces. All the countries joined the war enthusiastically, hoping to gain from a quick victory. All the countries, they joined the war by thinking that they will get more benefit from that. But students, I have told you, war has always brought destruction. No one has benefited from the war. It is true, and we have seen World War I also and World War II also, no one has benefited. Rather, the hope they were having, that is, they will get quick victory from that, it was not like that. Rather, very soon they realized that the war would stretch on and it will lead to the draining of Europe of all of its resources. This was clear. This is the part of the destruction which is brought by the war. In the beginning, Germany gains by occupying France and Belgium, but the situation changed with the joining of America with the Allies group. Result of that, Germany and the Central Power defeated by the Allies in November 1918. With this, World War I came to an end. But the story of World War I not came to an end here. The World War I came to an end here. And what was the effect of World War I? After that we will discuss. And it is very harsh. What was that? The defeat of Imperial Germany and the abdication of the emperor gave an opportunity to the parliamentary party to recast German politics. Germany was defeated. King gave up his power. That is why abdication of the emperor. gave up his power. With this, it cleared the path of establishing a parliamentary system in Germany. At the same time, a national assembly met at Weimar and established democratic constitutions with a federal structure. At Weimar, assembly met and they adopted a constitution with a federal structure. Federal structure means having the units of states, not the unitarian structure, which is where all the powers are led by the central government alone. Here it is federal structure. Central government as well as state governments. With this feature, they adopted a constitution. As a result of that, deputies were elected to the German parliament. Deputies, the member of the parliament were called as deputies. They were elected to the German parliament, which is otherwise known as Reichstag. But the most important thing is that here they adopted equal and universal voting rights system, where all the people, including women, got the right to vote. This is the most important part of this election. We have seen earlier in French Revolution also, National Assembly election held, but women were deprived of their right. They got the right to vote in 1946. But here, when the election held, they adopted the principle of equal and universal voting rights, where women also got the right to vote. Now you see, this is the image of the German parliament called as Reichstag. The German flag is there also. Now, though the German adopted a democratic system, still people were not happy. This republic not received by its own people. Why you know? Because the most important, again we will go back to the World War I. Here, the term it was forced to accept after Germany's defeat at the end of the First World War. I have told you, the Allied group didn't want to impose harsh treatment over the Axis after the end of the World War I. After the end of the World War I. Because they know better what had happened after the end of World War I. And what had happened, now we will discuss. The treatment made forcibly over the central powers. With the defeat of the Germany had to sign a peace treaty. That is the Treaty of Versailles, peace treaty. And it was imposed over the Germans. That is why Germans were not happy about the treaty. That is why the republic was also not accepted fully by the people. Because the parliament or the republic had to sign the treaty, for which people were not at all happy. The peace treaty of Versailles was so harsh and humiliating peace. That is why people didn't support it. What was the part of the treaty? What was there? You see, later on you will know why the people were right, why the people were not supporting the republic. See, what is the reason? The part of the treaty is that Germany lost its overseas colonies. What are the colonies where they are under the German? It was taken away by the Allied group. First, that constituted 1/10 of its population. Second one, 13% of the territories were taken away by the Allied group. 75% of its coal reserved to France, Poland, Denmark and Lithuania. The major part of the coal reserve area given to France, Poland, Denmark and Lithuania. This was the penalty over the Germany. The Allied powers demilitarized Germany to weaken its power. The German cannot have their military, so that in the future also they can never dare to go against the Allies group again. That is why the Allied power demilitarized the Germany. Then the War Guild Clause held Germany responsible for the war and damages the Allied countries suffered. Because of this Allied group, whatever the damages made, they imposed penalty over the German. The War Guild Clause. Germany was forced to pay compensation amounting to 6 billion pound. Along with this cold reserve territories, 6 billion pound had to be given by Germany to the Allied group because of the damages made in the war. See. Then the Allied armies also occupied the resource-rich Rhineland land for much of the 1920s. Along with the coal reserve area, the resource-rich Rhineland also occupied by the Allied army because of the war compensation. So this was the reason why many of the Germans held the Weimar Republic responsible for not only the defeat in the war, but also signing the disgraceful treaty with the Allied power at Versailles. Because the people thought that Weimar Republic is responsible for that, for signing the treaty, peace treaty. But are you thinking it is a peace treaty? In the name of peace, they have imposed harsh and humiliating clause over the people of Germany. That is why the people were not happy with the Weimar Republic. See the image, the political map. The part of the Germany which was there in 1914 were taken by the Allied group in the latter part. Some parts like your resource-rich land, then your coal reserves, German colonies, and other territories taken away by the Allied group. Now, with this, we got to know about the story of Helmut. We have seen the different causes of World War II. With this, now I am going to ask some questions to you based on today's discussion. The first one is, who was the propaganda minister of Hitler? Answer is, Goebbels was the propaganda minister of Hitler. Second question is, what is the name of the parliament of Germany? Reichstag is the parliament of Germany. The answer is Reichstag. Now, what is genocidal war? We have seen the Nazis committed genocidal war. Now, what is that genocidal war? Genocidal war means killing on large scale, leading to destruction of large section of the people. With this, we have completed the today's discussion. We'll see the next part of the discussion in the next class.